Welcome to AI Snap That. My name is Mike Rollins, and I'm joined as always by Thanos, he of the Snapdom. Today, we are going to talk about the Fable 5 drama that's been going on. We're going to talk about the rise of the vibe coders as they are starting to show up to displace the software engineers, kind of. And we're going to talk about our development environments. So, Thanos, I love the look on your face when I said vibe coders are replacing software engineers. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. So let's jump
Has it
into
been a
Fable
controversial week
5.
for you?
Oh my God. Yes, believe me, you will really enjoy some of this. There's a lot of current drama around Fable 5. We're recording this on July 9th. I believe GPT 5.6 was just released. And we are, uh, so let me give this series of events. So Fable 5 released a few weeks ago. And then they were going to give everybody like 2 weeks of Fable 5 usage, and then they were going to pull it back like a drug dealer. And they were trying to get everybody hooked on Fable 5. It worked. I just want to point out it worked. But then the government, US government came in and was like, we got a problem. And I actually want to dig into that a little bit later in the governments and AI section. But then then the government pulled the gate back for Fable 5. Fable 5 came out. Anthropic was like, awesome, you guys can have 5 days or something of Fable 5. Everybody freaked out, started using it as much as they can. The token maxers came out of their closets to start screaming again. And can I just tell you how aggravated I am listening to token maxers? That is the stupidest idea. It's just wasteful, man. Quit destroying water and burning electricity, right?
Just to leak the most tokens as fast as you can and lose the most money. Like
Yeah. But anyways, we've gone on at length about that.
that's an input metric. I like output
And
metrics.
then so then they were going to cut everything off on July 7th. And the interesting thing is, out of the blue, they said, you know what? We're going to give you until July 12th. We're going to give you until July 12th. And I was sitting in my office and I looked at Chris and I was like, when's GPT 5.6 supposed to drop? I said, is it a couple days after July 7th? And Chris is like, yeah, rumors are it's going to be Thursday or Friday of this week. Don't you know it? GPT 5.6 dropped today, which is July 9th. And as of yesterday, Anthropic was like, hey, you know what? We're going to give you until July 12th. We're going to give you until July 12th. It has to have been. The decision was made.
When is
It's
the party
like,
going to end? When are the free tokens going to end in
oh
general? Is
God,
what I wonder.
it is got to be soon. And don't
It's
get me
weird because
wrong.
we'll talk about this later. But I trying to do some development where it doesn't happen on my machine, so I can't use my Claude subscription, but it has to be actual straight up tokens. Boy,
Mhm.
that gets expensive quickly. That's not a joke.
Have you seen? Are you using Fable? Because that's going to get
No,
really expensive.
on
Okay,
Opus.
Fable.
So I spent some tokens on Opus and I built like a large project that had like 10, 12 features and it ended up costing like
Mhm.
$150. It's like, wow, normally I would have done this in a day and I would have taken like a few percents off my Claude subscription.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's,
Um,
when is the bubble going to stop funding our development cycles?
so yeah, I read this morning, and this is, I think we're going to start seeing more of this, right? So we saw, was it GLM 5.2 released? It's supposed to be more token efficient, supposed to have some capabilities equivalent with Fable 5. I don't know. Benchmarks are benchmarks. I've not used it. But Grok, the new version of Grok, also dropped yesterday or today. And they are taking I think this is they're taking the right path. Now, will I ever use Grok? I can't say no, but what I will tell you is, boy, they're going to have to do a lot of convincing. I do not want Mecha Hitler to show up in the middle of my coding session, right? Like, no,
Michael,
no, no,
that's a
no.
great idea. In addition, I built you a very nice Easter egg that will generate certain kinds of images as your software if you happen to
Oh
hit
my
this sequence of
God.
keystrokes. And it's like, no, no,
Yes.
please don't.
No, don't do that. Um, but
It's
yeah,
it's interesting though because we're having these super new models that are really really capable, but there's also some open source models that you can get for about a tenth of the cost of the frontier
yes,
models. That
yes.
with perhaps a little bit of scaffolding, they might do just as good of a job for most tasks. So
And
I
that.
wonder
Mhm.
how that is going to work out competitively. Again, we're having a topic near the end about development
Mhm.
cycle, about development processes, but it's going to be fairly straightforward very soon to say, hey, Claude, take this and build it. And then say, hey, Claude, take this and build it with this open source model. And then look at the results and be like, okay, that was pretty similar. I don't need to pay in
So
10x.
obviously, we're going to talk about this later. I will tell you that with my current setup, I see very few differences between Opus 4.8 and Fable. And
Other than in your wallet.
that, yeah, and that's the point. When Grok, so the new model that Grok released, you know what they said about it? It's as capable as Opus 4.7, but it's a tenth of the cost and it's faster. And I'm like, this is it. This is how people start undercutting the big OpenAI and Anthropic. Because and I've always stated, at what point is it good enough? When is it good enough? If we were to take all these models that we're using and freeze them at one point in time, the question is this good enough such that I would continue to use this to write all of my code, even if it never changed again? And the
Take that
answer,
thought a step further, right?
mhm,
Oh, there's an answer. Sorry.
no,
I'll
no,
take that step
yeah,
further after your answer.
GPT 5.2. That's when it was. GPT 5.2 and Opus, the Opus 4.5 release, if we never saw an additional improvement on either of those models, both of them would still get used. And so I think
Yeah,
we're,
it's
we're
pretty solid from there on.
yeah. So you were going to say before I
But
cut you
yeah, I
off.
was going to give you a different thought, right? In listening to various podcasts as to what happens when all the jobs go away and the AI is doing everything. And Vinod Khosla was on Sam Harris's podcast, and he was talking about various ideas of how to deal with this. And one of the ideas that was in there was, okay, so we have like a 20% token tax, right? So all the AIs, you grab 20% from that, and like you can debate the merits of that, but it's just a plausible thing to test. But like when all the open source models have taken over and they're just as good as the big ones and the big AI bubble pops,
Right.
where's your
Yeah.
20% going to come from? Right? The jobs are
Yeah.
still gone. You could tax inference, but like, okay, like as things get better and smarter, that's going to be less of your bill. So
Okay.
now what?
In our third segment, I will go on about this significantly. Jobs are not
We didn't
going
say we're going to do the
away.
segments in order.
Jobs are just fucking not going away. Okay. Let's
Some
keep
jobs are
moving.
going away.
Yeah, sure. But like these fucking doers, man. Anyways, I think we have hit good enough. And that my guess is that we're going to see a commoditization in the near future. But first, we got to see if Anthropic and OpenAI can IPO. And if they can, if one or both of them get to an IPO, then we're going to have these frontier closed source models for a long time. But
Why
the
why does their IPO matter?
they need more cash. These businesses are just insanely, they just burn cash all the time. And so
Right.
if
So they
they
go raise a bunch of cash, but like at the end of the day, if they get undercut by good enough open source models, they're, bubble pops, they're going away.
because now, so here's the other aspect,
Huge,
which is,
fairly big picture. There's many ifs,
yeah,
ands, or buts that can happen in there, but
there is a world where we stop talking about models. Do you remember mobile early on? Where we would talk about the amount of RAM, we would talk about this, what's the CPU that this phone is running, um, what are the what are the different specs of the device. We don't talk about that anymore, right? Those low level specs are the equivalent to what's the model, what's the token spend. And nowadays, what you talk about is there's two things that are super important to every smartphone release: the camera and the screen. And you could say, does it look
it's
sexy?
the
But
AI
that's
equivalent
obvious.
here.
It's the product. And so my guess is you're going to see the majority of the business shift from we're building the frontier models to get better capabilities, and it's going to transition into harnesses. Whoever has the best harness, the most efficient harness, the harness that works the best with the model, like the
That's short
harness is the
term and easily
product.
replicatable. There's no particular barrier to harnesses. Like I'm building a
And
harness and that I like, and it has taken me like a week, and it's you know not great yet, but it's getting better every day.
Right. But
And I'm one guy.
Anthropic's already running this playbook. It's called Claude Cowork. It's called Claude Design. All of it's wrapped around the harness. So they've taken the harness, which is Claude Code, and they've built products on top of it. It's no longer for them, it's no longer about the tokens that they're building or the models they're building. It's now become about the harness. What can we do with the harness? In Rex, the other thing we're talking about is we let our users pick the model. And I'm like, this is stupid. Everybody goes in and they pick the absolute best model they've heard about. They pick the latest hype in our product. And then they say, "Hey, how you doing?" And now they're like obliterating tokens at the beginning of a conversation with Opus 4.8 or God help them Fable 5, right? When the fact of the matter is what we may very well do is say Claude, and then make decisions on the back end about whether or not we're going to toss their requests to the bigger models or the smaller models. And as a result, the product gets better because most of your conversation can happen with a Haiku or a GPT mini. But, and then when the big tasks jump in, you can switch over to the bigger models.
I don't
But
disagree with you that the model idea can go away, right? At some point, the
yeah,
models are going to be good enough and they'll keep getting better and like we'll just keep upgrading them in the back end and no one's going to care. But I'm not sure is that the eventual level of abstraction that we'll care about is the harness. I think care about the harness for 6 months and then there's going to be 100 harnesses that are really, really freaking good. And then
yes.
now we'll want to say, hey, I have a business idea and I want to give you a short prompt.
Mhm.
And then you go build it and staff it.
Right.
And then like where does that keep going, right? Again, I'm just making this up, but as levels of abstraction move higher,
Mhm.
where do we end up with, right? And who
We end
wins?
up we end up focusing on the product. That's it. The
So that's a
harness
win. I
is
mean, start with that.
yeah, the harness is the product, if you will. Or like you can see the tokens are gas. The harness is the engine, okay? Like whatever. But ultimately it's what you're wrapping around the harness that's the product. So you're right, it doesn't stop at the harness. I think the harness is the next step. But then what's really going to end up happening is I don't care what model is being used. What I care is how can I use it? What's the ease of use? What can it do? Are the like, can I share this with my company? Is it secure? I've had so many people come to me. They're like, hey, I've got this thing I vibe coded. I can already sell it, but I don't think I want to sell it because I'm pretty sure it's wildly insecure. And like it's just going to keep going up the stack. And eventually what we're going to get to is, hey, we're going to focus on the UI of the product and we're going to focus on the capabilities of the product. And nobody is going to care what the harness is, what the model is, none of it, because
Yeah, but I
everything's
think there's going to be
basically good now.
abstractions that develop as we do this
Yeah.
that we don't quite have yet, right? So we may
Right.
have right now. There's no great abstractions
Mm-hmm.
for the concept of a user and their data, right?
Mm-hmm.
I as Thanos, I have data in a bunch of websites, but there's none that I control, right? So at some point,
Yeah.
these kind of abstractions that, hey, I am this person, I have this data, these are mine, and they're mine no matter what services I use, other kind of models will start existing so that when people that are going to be building these nice experiences for me where they can focus on the UI, and I think I'd say they focus more on the experience than the UI because I think we have enough sort of UI constructs that if you kind of focus on the tasks and the experiences, the AI is going to be really good at figuring out if this is a dialog box or cancel button or radio button or whatever UI, right? No one's going to have to reinvent these from scratch
Yeah.
ever
I
again.
agree.
And these kind of advanced concepts that we don't quite have in our vocabulary yet are the things that are going to enable the super nice experiences that kind of get built on top of these systems that we have, right? Now
Mhm.
this is the democratization of writing software. Now, I give you that people are not going to have to know how to do software engineering because all that stuff will be done by the AI, but they still need to
Mhm.
know some concepts of, okay, we have data and then there's some structure and ways to, again, you don't need to be a DBA, but you'll need to understand some idea of like how data works. And there's things like APIs, and that's how two systems talk to each other. And there's going to be some conceptual design of these things where I can say, okay,
Yeah.
here's my data, here's my APIs, here's my experience. And now I
Mhm.
can go talk to others that have similar things and we can interoperate in a much easier way than it used to be before.
I actually let's transition to the rise of the vibe coders here. because we're basically heading that direction. And it's funny. I have been talking about, I guess it's the Jevons paradox, right? Ironically, I opened a YouTube video yesterday and I was like, who is this clown? Because I'm pretty sure he's getting these ideas from me. It literally, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've written posts. I've been talking about it. It was Hank Green. Apparently, Hank Green's been following my content. So he's cribbing all of my notes, right? You have no idea who
Fill
Hank
us in
Green
on
is,
who
right?
these folks are and what this paradox is about.
Okay, so first off, Hank Green is one of the best known YouTubers on the planet, which is so I didn't know who he was, but how extraordinarily prideful that I assumed he was listening to me. But so the Jevons paradox is this, right? That an increase in efficiency does not, let me rephrase this, an increase in efficiency often increases the demand. Okay. And so you've seen this in highways. They expand a highway and you don't traffic doesn't move faster. Now there's just more cars moving at the same speed, right? Like this is just over and over. This is proven to be the case. But the perfect example is the Gutenberg printing press. So the printing press, and this is like the 1500s or something. The printing press, when it was designed, when it was built, the whole idea was it was so expensive to copy books that only the rich could own them. And Gutenberg was like, hey, what if we just do what is effectively has become typesetting, where we put the letters in and we just, and now we can just duplicate this page over and over and over. It's a perfect duplicate as long as the typesetting was perfect. And there's a world where you think, good, we're going to have more books now, right? A family may be able to afford a Bible, which is actually the whole reason he did it. But then you had newspapers show up. And all of a sudden, eventually you got the penny dreadfuls. Now you have words on screens. There is a direct line from the Gutenberg printing press to the words that we look at on our screen, right? The smartphone was dependent on the Gutenberg printing press because, oh, you know what else it did? Now that there's more books, people actually want to learn to read. And so this guy built this thing just so everybody could have a Bible in Europe. And it ended up creating our world, our economy, that it has effectively created the tech we work with. Now, obviously, there was no electrical engineering, but how hard would it be to do electrical engineering if we couldn't have books? And so you increase the efficiency of creating a book, and you literally created an entirely new economy as a result. That's where we are with AI. Like I'm fully convinced. And so you have, all right, I'm going to hold on. I'm going to pause. I'm feeling it. I'll let you respond, Thaddeus.
I don't have any doubt that what you're saying is that as the price of developing software goes down, the demand's going to go
Yeah.
up, right? Because everyone
Yeah.
wants software. There's 8 times a day that I come across something that before would have been infeasible to build. It's like, you know what? I could spend 10 minutes and I could just have this up and running.
Yep.
So the cost goes down, demand goes up. I think that's pretty straightforward. I think the next interesting questions that we're looking to answer is,
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like? What are the cool constructs that we have to build? What are the new things that
Mm-hmm.
we have to invent?
Yeah.
And that's kind of why
Yeah.
it's kind of the most exciting time that I've lived through with
Um,
software. It's just so crazy
it's
what we can
so
do
much
now.
fun. Yeah. One of the guys that's in my office, he related this story the other day, and it is the perfect example of this. So his son, about a year ago, was in the office with him, and he was like, "Dad, I'm kind of bored. What can I do?" And he goes, here's Claude Code or something. And why don't you build something? He was, okay, cool. I've wanted to build this game. So he went and he spent about a week or two building an overhead 2D RPG RTS kind of thing, right? So you leveled your characters, but you also had to do real time strategy stuff. And he said that his son just last week took his game and in 2 days converted it into a 3D game that's first person. So the same premise, the same game, started with the game, 2 days to convert it to 3D. And it's, oh my God. Now I'm sitting here thinking, I loved RPGs when I was a kid. Maybe I should go build some of them, right? I haven't even thought of that. I'm like, oh, I can be a game developer. Um, but think about that. A 14-year-old kid was able to build a 3D version of a 2D RPG he built. Like, that's wild. Can you imagine what that would have been
It,
like during the Nintendo days, Thanos?
or the Gutenberg days.
Yeah. What do you like?
So you think it's going to be vibe coding all the way?
I do. Now, I think one of the things that I'm seeing when I talk about the rise of the vibe coders and how angry I'm making all these software engineers. So on my Instagram, rollins.io plug, uh, I talk a lot about the differences between being a vibe coder and the difference between being an engineer, a software engineer. And what I've noticed is that I can often tell how long someone's been vibe coding based solely on how much they talk like an engineer. Without fail. Like people
Explain,
come in.
explain.
Okay,
Give me some
so
examples here.
people are gaining mastery of software engineering concepts by vibe coding because you put the initial prototype together and it's okay, this is interesting. I don't want to use it, but I think there's something here. So then what they do is they start iterating on the concept and they're like building it out and they're building it out. And while they're doing this, they're actually learning software engineering fundamentals. And so the longer someone has been vibe coding, they start sounding like an engineer. And there's some point between 7 months to a year of vibe coding where I'm like, you understand at least as much as a junior level engineer. It's now, is their knowledge
Are you saying that
perfect?
practice
Obviously
with
not.
something makes you better at it? Like that's crazy
Yes.
talk.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Like,
That sometimes I cannot resist the sarcasm, but I mean that makes
no.
sense, right? And you have this
Yes.
teacher, the AI that is patient and is going to sit there and walk you through, and you can
Yep.
ask stupid questions like, "Hey, I sent this URL http://localhost to my friend and it couldn't load it. What the hell?"
What do I do?
And
Yeah.
the AI is going to explain it to it, and it's like, "Okay, you see, this is
Okay.
how this works."
Mhm. Yeah. How do I
And they're
deploy
going to say,
this?
"Can you
Yep.
just, deploy this
Mhm.
somewhere?" And the AI will be like, "Well, just give me the keys, and I got this for you." And they'll give them the
Mhm.
keys, and they'll got this for you. And then
Yep.
a couple of weeks later, they'll be complaining why it deleted their production database, and they'll learn from that, and they'll keep getting better.
Yes.
It's going to be a little rough, but they'll
It
get there.
Here's the other thing that's impressive. It takes about 3 months for a vibe coder to start knowing what they don't know. And
Well,
so
it's
it's the
what's the two guys? Yeah,
Dunning-Kruger and
Dunning Kruger,
yeah.
Dunning and Kruger.
Uh so the funny thing is these folks are, and this is actually, there's a group of vibe coders that have started to come to me and they're almost all in construction. Okay. Their construction software is notoriously awful and very expensive. And I've currently had 4 different organizations or people approach me saying, "Hey, I have this vibe coded thing. I know it works. I suddenly realized that this is going to be dangerous for me to try to put into production, even if they don't know what production is." And so we're talking about partnering with them and being a professional software engineering organization that supports them, right? But 2 of them, fully 50%, and there's actually more that I've talked with, are in construction. And people are going in and they're paying $150,000 as a small business to implement construction software to manage quotes and workflows and all these things that are really important to the construction industry. But the software is horrific. One of my good buddies down the road is super successful as a roofer, and he had his favorite piece of software got bought by somebody else, and within 6 months it had just been fully unshitified, right? And like they had degraded it and then they made it cost more, and he complains about it all the time. And it's, hey, I'm like, Mark, let me just partner with you to build this, dude. I know we could take your ideas, but you've got a bunch of people that are these domain experts, and they suddenly have the capability to build the thing they've always wanted to build. And you know what? They're better at it than the people that are building the software now, because they're literally in the middle of, they do this every day, right? How many times as a software engineer have you approached someone and said, I think I've solved all your problems with your job? And it takes them about 2 minutes and said, you have no idea what you're doing. Have you ever encountered that?
No clue what you're talking about. But that's, I mean, that's how we approach problems, right? Because you'll see a lot of startups, they'll go in and they'll have an idea of how to solve it, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
go straight into implementation. It's like, maybe you should have someone like look at this before you build the whole thing, because you will learn really quickly.
So that is exactly it. And that's the interesting thing is like people, when they want to do a startup, they take on seed, right? Seed is the founders can eat for 6 months to a year while they come up with ideas. Then they take on, or friends and family, then they take on seed. The first one's friends and family, then seed. And seed is, do we have a prototype? And then they take on maybe pre-A. And like all of this is basically, who's our user? What does our user need? Um, is there a market? How many of our users exist? Um, and you literally typically spend a few $1 million in a traditional startup to get all of those questions answered. The people that are building the software are the user. They know if there's a market because all they have to do is know if there's more people like them. The fact that they are in an industry indicates that there are more people like them. They know exactly what the product should be. They literally short circuit a few $1 million and they're building the base thing with Lovable or Replit. And so
Ship
these
it.
people are, yeah, these people are gonna like, yeah. No, so then that's the problem is they do hit a wall eventually. They're like, so one of the guys I was talking with, I was like, hey, can you shoot me like can you give me like a user account or something so I can just kind of poke around? And he goes, I'll have to have Claude do that. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Why does Claude have to make my account? And he
There
goes,
is no
well,
logins yet.
no, there is a login. There's one. There's one account. And I said, don't you have like an admin portal? Don't you have the ability to manage users? He's, no, I
Didn't
didn't
need
really
that
know
yet.
that I was supposed to build that until recently, right? And then I'm like, hey, have you done X, Y, and Z? And eventually what you get to is they have the prototype and now they need the prototype to become a like solid product. And they hit this bifurcation, right? Am I going to continue down this path of my current job and product management where I know everything and I can just tell other people how to do it? Or do I become the software engineer and do it slower, but maybe less expensive? And
That's the whole
I'm
thing, that you
pretty,
don't need to do that, right? And we've done this jokingly, where we kind of like, look down at the vibe coders, because it's like, oh, we know how this is going
yeah.
to end, right? And
Mm-hmm.
but like, part of the engineering role is to do these sort of translations of okay,
Yes.
there's the business requirements, but yeah, you need a login, you need an admin panel, and no
Mm-hmm.
one is expected to know they need that, right? That is an engineering kind of problem.
No.
So you
Yes.
could go the slow way and talk to Claude and figure this out, or you partner in this meaningful way, right? Where the actual engineer, with the help of all the AI tools, can do the engineering kind of jobs and provide the good judgment of what you need. And the person that knows the industry really jumps in and gets that aspect done. And I think that pairing is producing really, really good results. I also have a couple of clients in that mode, and it's actually really, really good. It moves really, really fast with all the AI tools, and it
Yes.
really hitting markets that already exist and are likely to be super successful.
Yeah. The vibe coders are the new engineers. Jevons paradox is real, but that doesn't mean that true software engineers are going away. I continue, just from a risk perspective, how likely everybody thinks I'm insane, and I am, because I'm now letting agents run the entire thing, including deploy. Right? I have GitHub issues. I go in, I just let these agents, this is more about my workflow, but we'll get there, pick everything up and they just run it. And then I have everything get flagged, feature flagged, and then I let the agent deploy. And this is on a very early prototype software, so it's not as insane. But that's the same thing vibe coders are basically betting is going to work. and you and I have done this long, and that's going to break down somewhere, man. And when it breaks down,
But
what do
if
you
you
do?
put in the right safeguards, right? The engineer can go in and put the right safeguards because you know how this breaks, and I'm sure you built a bunch
Exactly.
of them to let it go do deployments.
Right.
And now you get the best of all worlds.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%.
So,
I think
by the
that
way, my friends,
yeah, do it. And if you want to be an engineer, go just continue to vibe code. Go practice. That's why I tell people. They're like, Michael, how do I get into this industry? I'm like, what are you building? They're like, I'm getting certifications. Why? That's stupid. I talked with a young guy yesterday. He's just graduated, having a hard time finding a job. And he was said the exact same thing. I'm pursuing all these certifications. I'm kind of learning things. And I just looked at him. I was like, are you a runner? Have you ever run? He's, oh, I love running. I'm avid. I love it. And I said, if I were to tell you that I wanted to be a runner and I've read some really good books about it, what would you say to me? He goes, that's not how you learn how to run. That's not how you do it. I said, what would I need to do? He said,
you need to have shoes.
go run. But this is not. I was like, exactly. Get rid of the certifications. Just go build things. And so, yeah, it's a wild world. I don't know where all this is going, but I do think the vibe coders are a very powerful economic force, and I think we should be glad that they are.
And I think the tools also for the vibe coders are going to get better, right? Where when you go to
Yeah,
Replit, and I haven't been to Replit in a while, but it would probably come out the box and do some basic things that will
yeah,
make it shippable.
yeah. A lot of people are relying on Supabase for that. Actually, Supabase is a name. Have you heard about this?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it is literally just a trap. And I posted about it. This is one of the ones that made everybody angry, basically, which means it did amazingly good on Instagram. Basically, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to hack Instagram, you just go make people angry and boom, through the roof.
Is
And is
Superbase a sponsor of the show? Because I don't think they're ever going to be a
no,
sponsor of the show after this
probably
conversation.
not, especially when I said you
Yeah.
shouldn't use Supabase. Because Supabase costs do this. The more users,
Well, also
the
you
more
have to use
data. Yeah.
IPv6 to connect the database most of the time, unless you use these very weird
Uh,
concoctions they have to go IPv4.
yeah.
And I think they recently fixed it so that every new table you create isn't automatically open to the internet. So kudos to them for sorting that little mess out. But yes,
Yeah.
PSA, just go get an RDS Postgres on AWS and don't
Mhm.
don't do
Yeah.
Supabase if you're gonna go to
Pretty
production at some
much.
point in time.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So now that we're talking about tools, shall we transition into our current dev environments, and then we'll end with governments and AI?
Yeah. What's your most recent aha moment with development?
Um, so I have been on the never-ending quest to set software agents loose autonomously within a code base, and I've done it. The irony is one of the project you and I worked on together. What was the workflow engine you used?
Oral.
Temporal. Okay. So basically, I built a system based on temporal. And so there is an agent that runs it. And that agent is it goes out to a place where there are things to fix, there are features to build.
So
And
when you say an
it
agent, this is kind of what kind of is this like your own
an
loop or is this
instance
like a
of
Claude instance
yeah,
or
it's a Claude Code instance on a loop. Yeah.
okay. And this
And so what
runs
it does,
locally on your machine?
so right now it runs locally. The intent is I'm going to deploy it somewhere. Um,
Okay.
and what it ends up doing is it'll go out, it finds an issue or a feature. This one has to run with a
In
Frontier
like
model. So
linear or something like that.
yeah, I use GitHub issues, but now also we
I won't hold it
have
against you too much.
I just don't see the point of using Kanban at this stage, because like things are getting opened and closed within 2 hours. I don't need to necessarily track it across the done state. Though actually, no, maybe you're right. Actually, no. Oh shit. I just realized that the next feature I've been wanting to build actually becomes a Kanban board. So there we are. Excellent. I'll go look at linear now. Oh, but it runs on temporal. There's a centralized agent. It's not truly an orchestrator agent, but it kind of is. It goes out, it finds the things that need to be fixed. It does have a cap on the number of issues or features it will toss out at one time because I run out of RAM on my machine. But it will go find this and then it starts loading things into temporal. And this could be, here's the plan for the bug fix, here's the feature. There's a lot of different ways it can do it, but I leave it the ability to specify how it's going to happen. Then, while it's on my local machine, I have it spin up a single iTerm running Claude code in auto mode uh, that is then instructed, go pick up this work, go pick up this thing out of temporal, go pick up this particular line of work. And then the spawned agent just runs. Each spawned agent can stand up its own copy of the stack using Docker. So I have the ability to create unique Docker containers and instances that are based solely on the branch. Everything happens on a work tree. And once it gets done, there's three different states then. Once it's done or it thinks it's done, it can flag it and say, oh, and by the way, like it feature flags things. Like I'm using engineering best practices, right? And so it either raises a flag and says, okay, I need a human review, or it asks the orchestrator for a review, or it reviews itself and merges. And then the orchestrator can decide when to deploy. And so far, it's been pretty good. I've actually gotten a lot of things through that I never had to look at. The correctness infrastructure around all of this is intense. You literally the only way any of this stuff can get merged is if it passes 50 different checks. Did it break? Is it compiling? Is it doing this? Does it pass all of these test suites? Did you actually improve the quality of the testing? How's the end-to-end stuff working? Are there any security flaws in this? Did you really screw up? So the correctness infrastructure is basically where everything is now. And DevOps continues to basically tell me that's where the game is at the moment. So it's fun. It's very chaotic. It's very easy to lose track of what's happening, which is why apparently I'm going to build my own Kanban board so I can now track everything in motion. Damn you, Thanos. What about you?
Yeah,
How's your
and
engineering environment?
you're gonna need more than that. Yeah, so it turns out that since great minds think alike, I've been going down a similar rabbit hole as you have. So there's a lot of overlap here. But I've been using since March or so. I've been using Gastown,
Mhm,
which does a lot of all these things, right? The idea there is you have like a mayor that runs different rigs. Each rig is kind of like a project, and you can have different crews that work on them, and
mhm. Yeah.
it's really nice. It's basically like infinite set of communicating Claude instances that do stuff.
Mhm,
But the first problem that I hit, and that was a bunch of months ago, was at some point in time, this was running locally off my laptop. It was running locally from my desktop, which is a Mac Studio. At some point, I was looking through the terminal and said, and I made this production release. And I was like, whoa, 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 no, you're not ready for that. So I had to figure out how to take the keys away from doing that, because in a lot of
mhm.
these projects, I'm not ready for that yet. There are no, the gates that I'd like before it can do production release were not there. So I decided to run it on a virtual machine. So now I have a virtual machine that runs locally that can run all that stuff, and it has basically two credentials. It has a GitHub credential with some specific criteria that it can do certain things, but it doesn't go into Kubernetes clusters. It can't do other stuff. And what else does it have? I think that may be it. So it's really lightweight. Like it can push code, but it can't deploy and it cannot do anything else. So that solved kind of the first problem of, okay, now this is reasonably sandbox and it cannot like take down the system in any kind of way. And, for some projects that are greenfield, it was okay how it was before. But like if you really want to
Right.
mature this was not an acceptable way of having it. The problem
Right.
that I had is then, summer workationing in Greece, and I'm working off my Mac Pro. And when you're running 20 instances of Claude in one VM and you give it all your resources, your lap is literally on fire. And then things start slowing down and it takes just forever to get things done. So you're kind of
Yeah.
beginning to lose the parallelism of this.
Hmm.
So the other thing, and is the problem that you mentioned, is I work on 6 or 7 projects at the same time, and I couldn't
Right.
keep track of what's happening. Right? You kind of going around. You're saying, okay, start this, then you go start this, start this, start this, and you go back and look at what was happening, and I forgot what I asked it. So I
Yes.
started building dashboards that would show me what was in progress and what was working on and what was needed my actions. And I found myself like looking at those, but then I was just copy pasting instructions saying, okay, this one, the test didn't pass, so send it back to the agent. Copy this, paste it there. And like, okay, could you tell the agent to do this so I don't have to be in this loop?
Hmm.
So I needed to solve 2 more problems, right? One is, can the agents talk to each other so I don't have to do stupid stuff that I don't need to do? And can it not run off my laptop? So over the past couple of weeks, I've created the system that runs off of Kubernetes, and you can basically, the agents spin up in the cloud. So it doesn't have to burn my lap. And that gets a bit more expensive, right? Because now you have this thing that, spins up a node and it runs for a while. But again, when I'm not working at night, it shuts down and it's auto scaling. So that's really quite nice. It cannot run off my cloud subscription, so that gets expensive with a token. So my next experiment there is, can I use something else and see if I can make it run a little less expensively. And my dashboards are beginning to develop more and more. So I started off with, okay, I will tag a ticket in Linear with agents. And what I want to see is a PR that passes everything. It's done reviews. I also fed it all the formulas that Gastown has. So it has like 7 designers and 7 reviewers with different areas of functionality. So it knows these, and when it does a review, it'll spin up 7 agents and do a review. It's a little tricky because it will come back with like, oh, there's a linting problem, and then it will spin up the 7 agents again. Here's $20 to do another review. So I'm kind of working to tweak these things for like the single one. And then I have the idea of, okay, you have a project. Now the project, I'll give you the description, then you spin it up, you give it to a designer or 7 designers. They design all the areas, they collaborate, they figure it out. I'm using a tool called AgentWeb, aweb.io, that has a technology for the agents to communicate to each other. So it'll create ephemeral agents, they'll get identities, they can chat to each other to do these reviews, and it works quite nicely. And it also uses temporal, right? Because I want to get out of the idea that you had the agent do all the orchestration, because they're kind of unpredictable. And my process does kind of have some logic to it. It's like, okay, like I want a design document, I want to approve it. Sometimes, not all the time. I want the reviews. Like, this is the path. And don't bother me if it doesn't meet these criteria. I never want to see a pull request that doesn't pass the test. I never want to see a pull request that has a merge conflict. Like, just go deal with it. So it's quite nice. I'm not quite there yet, but it's getting like a really nice flow to it where you can sort of keep momentum across projects. So it's been a lot of fun.
You said something that, why are you having the agents do the correctness checks? Why are you doing that?
So
You,
there's review agents. So I have a
mhm.
security agent that will review for security. I have a
Okay. Yeah,
correctness
yeah, that
agent that will review
makes,
for logical correctness, linter, and so
okay.
on. But then
Well,
it will
hold
run
on,
CI/CD.
but let me stop you there. Why are you doing a linter inside of an agent? Just can't you just
I'm not.
run the linter?
The linter will run on CI/CD and
Okay.
figure it out. Now,
Okay, that okay. Then
sometimes
mhm, go ahead.
sometimes if the linter is really cheap to run, you might want to give the linter to the agent so you don't have to wait all the way for CI/CD to figure it out, right? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
just before you push the branch, just run this. But sometimes
Mhm.
if the thing takes 10 minutes, you might want to be okay, like you guys do your thing and then let it run once. And there's some issues of like, when the issues come back, you kind of want to figure out who to give these issues to be fixed. And then do you want to trigger another review or not? So there's some things that still need to be figured out there. But the fun part that I want to get to eventually, once this loop is working really well, is then you can start extending these agents in a secure way, where now I can say, okay, you can now get a browser tool. So you can then go and look at this on the preview branch and tell me that it actually works before you're done. So I don't need to run the manual tests. Or I can have an agent that is my Sentry agent, and they look at Sentry and they decide when something looks important, they correlate it to a release, and then they have specific correctly permissioned tools that may not be MCP, because MCP kind of is a little bit YOLO at this point in time, to go and deal with these things. So maybe I'll say, hey, you can look in Sentry, you can resolve Sentry issues, you can create tickets, but like that's what you can do. You can't just have access to all my Sentry and do everything, because maybe you accidentally log a credential in Sentry and now you can actually do releases. No, we don't want that.
So I am tracking the same pathway. However, I've arrived at a different destination, which is the reason I'm running iTerm is because I've figured out how to spin up iTerm instances so they can utilize my Claude Code subscription. So I'm actually not dependent on paying for Claude specifically, right? I'm still able to utilize my Claude Code. The other thing is I like this isn't just working on the back end, and I don't even have a web UI yet, but it is doing Android and iOS. And so my two clients are Android and iOS, and that's where it gets really confusing because I'm like, hey, what UI are you working on? Are the UIs in parallel? Do they each support all the same features? But that means it has to run all of the Android and iOS infrastructure on my machine. And so now I have my own, like, these agents are now controlling sims and emulators on my machine to validate that everything works. And then they can upload to test flight and Firebase and do the test flight release and things like that. And so the more that I'm like sitting here and looking at this, I don't know that I can get away from having to have a true UI on whatever machine this is happening on.
Yeah,
Because
that might
that's,
be, and I've got a couple of projects that have apps, so that's a bridge I haven't crossed yet.
yeah,
But I think
it's a
also
lot.
the
Yeah.
tools might develop by the time that we get there, that they support stuff. The one thing that I'll say is, according to
Hmm.
Claude, which may be biased on this, when I said I wanted to use my Claude subscription across
Hmm.
my different Kubernetes pods running things, it
Hmm.
pointed out that the terms and conditions mean this for personal use. And once you start spanning a lot of Kubernetes nodes using your Claude subscription, you may get flagged and shut down, which is kind of sort of makes sense, right? Because like if you're paying the subscription, it's like a massive discount on tokens. So if you
I
see
know.
that you're logged in like 100 nodes, that may be a
Uh,
little bit of a
yeah.
problem.
Yeah,
But
but
the nice thing with
like,
this is I can easily instruct this and say, hey, spin two temporal workflows, spin these Claudes with a Claude Anthropic API key, spin this one with
right.
a cheapo Llama open source running
Mhm.
over there for a tenth, and produce two
Yeah.
PRs. And then I look and
Yes.
I judge. So that's an experiment that I'm going to eventually
Yeah.
run. But
Yeah.
the funner parts, I think, for me is also as you work with these agents and you now see day to day what you do. I'm just moving stuff from email to a developer to a linear ticket, and it's like
Hmm.
that's not working at my pay grade, right? So I
Yeah.
eventually want agents that do
Hmm.
that for me because it's not rocket science. And one of the things that I've built in my dashboards is chat APIs. So whenever an agent has a question, right there in the dashboard, it says, I have this question, I answer this question, and off it goes, and it continues. So it's kind of like simulating sort of working with a team and having like a chief of staff at some point that deals with some stuff and
Yeah.
different managers and kind of getting to, humans use hierarchies to deal with complexity. So
Hmm.
trying to recreate some kind of hierarchy where you can play at your level and then you have minions doing the work for you. So super
That is a
excited about
beautiful
how
quote.
this is going.
Humans use hierarchy to deal with complexity. That, bro, we need to emblazon that on everything we do. That is freaking brilliant.
And I think to be fair, that's like one of the really few mechanisms that we have to deal with complexity. Like if you think
Yeah.
about it, we just put things in like encapsulation,
Put
right?
them in
Is
boxes.
you
Yeah. It's
put it
like,
in there
not
and
gonna,
you give it an
yeah.
interface and you don't know how it works in, and then you can
Hmm.
put many of these and you can sort of stack them and you can look in the bigger ones and the ones higher up than the ones lower down, and so on. But
On a side note, this is one of the biggest issues with developers trying to communicate with other people is they get lost in parts of the hierarchy that are just not important and nobody cares about. Right? They're sitting there, the CEO is like, "Okay, tell me about this." And they're like, "There's this algorithm. Let me tell you about how beautiful it is." And the CEO is, "I don't care." And you kind of want to kick the engineer that's talking and be like, "Brother, different box. Go up one level.
stop
Okay,
talking. Yeah, go up
go open
three
the
levels.
next box." Yeah. And
Tell me how
yeah,
it
go
makes
up.
money.
Yes, that is it. But I remember at one of the companies you and I worked at together, I would have conversations with certain engineers. I'd be like, listen, you're freaking brilliant. And nobody knows it because they cannot understand a thing you're saying. Stop talking about the low level stuff. It's beautiful. It's amazing. You accomplished things. You suffered, right? You were Frodo carrying the ring to Mordor for this thing, and nobody cares. So move on. I actually,
It's a
I,
challenge.
uh, I spoke with someone last week, and this guy has plumbed the web browser to be able to leverage the graphics card on his machine. And so I opened up the same video in Descript, which is what we already always record in, and his thing. And Descript was running at 1.1 gigs. How many megs do you think his tool was running at? 100 megs of RAM. More performant, able to add things and subtract things faster. And it's because he and I was on a
This was
Mac.
doing exactly what? I didn't quite follow
So
what the
there were
hookup was.
and that's the problem. He so there's a some kind of protocol that's been released that he had found, he learned how to use it. And so he's able to offload a bunch of the browser functionality for video editing to the GPU. And typically people would have used FFmpeg for this, right? But he realized that FFmpeg was way too inefficient. It was super memory hungry. And so he went out and he actually found something else that he then started modifying to make the memory footprint super small. And so what he ended up doing is you can have this very full featured video editor in a browser running at a like literal fraction, 1/10 of the memory of something like Descript, and even 1/10 of the memory of a professional software engineering or video editing tool like, what is it? The Adobe one, and then Final Cut Pro, and then there's another one. Um,
I think you're
yeah,
like
like
that
I was,
engineer and I'm the CEO because you explained it really well, but I still have no idea exactly what he did.
and so that was the problem. He kept going to. I listened to him, and I just looked at him. I was like, "Is this how you're talking to the investors that are telling you no?" He goes, "Yeah, they just don't get it." I was like, "Bro, I'm a software engineer with 20 some years of experience. You lost me. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure in the description I just gave you, I did something wrong." And
Make
so, but
browser
that
go
was it.
faster.
Yeah,
Oh,
make
okay.
browser go
I get that.
faster. Make browser go faster
Make
is
faster go browser. Browser
yes.
go wee.
Um Anyways, it is yeah, browser go we. That's incredible.
I
It
should
it
put
was
that
an
with the other quote.
amazing, yeah, amazing tool. Hang on, I'm gonna find.
People
I
use
want to
hierarchies to manage with complexity and browser go wee.
browser go we. I'm gonna find his tool real quick because I'd like to shout him out.
The quote Bill O'Reilly.
One,
We're doing this live.
we're doing this live. God, do you know who? Nobody knows who that guy was anymore. All right, let's see. Elah, 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 and his address is. Let me find it.
In the show notes?
It's going to be in the show notes. Yeah. Okay. So, are we done with our dev environments?
I think so. I mean, I'm not done building it, so I think I'll
Oh,
have more to
yeah.
say
No, no, no.
going forward. But
Yeah.
I think I've said all the fun stuff that was to say for now. But
Okay.
I'm super excited as to where this is going.
I'm going to have to come to grips with the fact that now you told me I have to do Kanban, and I'm going to grieve the freedom I had already found by
It
getting rid of
depends
all
where you have to
software
do it,
engineering
right? It,
tools.
it depends if
I
if
know.
you're in the project you're working on, you're doing this with other people or you're doing it by yourself. But one of the things that Gastown has, it has this little built-in project called Beads, which has this really lightweight issue tracker.
Yeah.
And the problem I found with that is like, the idea is cute, but it doesn't really work well in practice. You can't visualize it. They kind of like
Mhm.
get lost. The database that they use called Dolt, and it just occasionally blows up and loses all my stuff. So it's not super reliable. So I still use Linear, and I got a different project workspace for every project that I'm working
Mhm.
on and track things. And if you have more people in, it kind of makes it easy to see things, but it also has
Yeah.
APIs and keys. So the AIs can pull stuff out of there. And heavens, it's not Jira, so it actually works quite well and it's fast.
Yeah.
So Atlassian, yet another company that will never be a sponsor of this podcast.
Yeah. No, nor would we maybe even let them.
And
How
shitifying
bad?
software development. That should be
Yeah.
the
How sad for them that they fired one of the primary architects of their software, and that guy basically just put the whole thing on the internet. Now he's being sued, but everybody else is, "Oh, this is great."
Not
Okay,
my circus,
so
not my monkeys.
oh my God, yes. There are. That's funny. I was explaining that quote to somebody yesterday. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming along. My apologies. We had to cut a little bit short. Thanos is a very important person, has to talk to a lot of people to go make the money. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that everybody has an amazing time. We will see you next week. Bye.